a suit and tie and get your hair cut way up high. Get yourself a lawyer, son. You're gonna need a real good one.
If you need a real good one, our number is 1300 222 774. David Whiting, your talkback lawyer, is here to give you some free legal advice. David, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Virginia.
We were talking about kerosene baths off air. We remember all of that.
We remember
well
headlines.
I remember the headlines.
It's the 3 paragraphs down you don't see.
Exactly. Let me see if I can... the screen has updated. Just before we get there, I just quickly wanted to read out... no, I can't, but it was from a nurse who was actually involved at the time and who wanted to put her point of view. I can find it. I might read that to you a bit later on. But that's our number if you want to grab a slot to get some advice. Was there some homework from last week, David?
We had Rob from Cranbourne. Rob owned a house.
Oh, this is a stormwater one.
And there was a stormwater drain.
Yes.
The expectation is that when you build a house or make a major construction or renovation, you have to make sure that the stormwater that comes off the building has somewhere to go. So we have a concept called the legal point of discharge.
Yep.
Point of discharge is determined by the council, and one would have thought that in the normal course it would be to discharge into a particular pit or drain. Rob finds that his house doesn't discharge into anything. It discharges into an easement in which one would normally expect to find a rather large stormwater drain or pipe. Yeah. There is no stormwater drain or pipe.
And he's worried about the property below him.
Yes, he said I think it was an aged care facility below him where there was an issue in relation to the water.
Could be.
Yeah, well, ultimately there will be, because every time you put a construction in, you reduce the ability of the block of land to absorb the water that comes from rain. So he doesn't have a responsibility. I'd be going back to council, and if you don't get what you want from council, talk to the Ombudsman. The answer would be there needs to be a stormwater drain system installed in the area, because the surface area of the easement won't be sufficient to take his runoff and everybody else's.
So deal with that sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. You also wanted to have a word about secret trials, and of course, the witness J and witness K matters are ones that are of great interest to Australians, even at the same time as they can't find out really anything about them.
Well, the witness J one was fascinating because he was a intelligence officer, and there were some issues in relation to an assessment, and the end result was, a reassessment of his ability to perform. The end result was that there was a trial conducted in secret. He then went into prison under a name other than his own, and as part of the process in prison, he was encouraged to write a memoir. And that was approved by the then governor. A new governor comes along and tells the Australian Federal Police that this guy's writing a memoir, and he sent a copy to his brother, all of which had previously been approved. Right. So the prisoner gets raided. He loses his internet connection, and the brother gets raided in Melbourne. And if he had not made a complaint to the courts about the changes of his facilities in the prison system, we wouldn't know anything about it. That's the prisoner J. He would be out of jail now. Who knows who's doing what for him at this stage? Then witness K was a ASIS agent who was, it would appear, involved in bugging the Timor-Leste government at the time we're negotiating boundaries and access to oil fields. Yes. And the result of all of that was, and he was going to give evidence to an international court in The Hague. That all stopped. He was prevented from leaving. We can't use witness K's name because, in fact, the Australian Secret Intelligence Service makes it an offence to tell anybody that you know someone who works for ASIS other than the Director General. So we can't use his name. But his lawyer, a fellow by the name of Brendan Collery, his trial started in the ACT Supreme Court in May. And that's all we know. It may still be running. We've got no idea.
I think it is. I mean, photographs of various legal counsel turning up, but that's it.
Yeah,
and I think some photographers actually got ticked off for even taking said photographs. It's extraordinary to think that we have court cases in absolute secrecy.
Well, I can give you one more that I read last year, and it was a person who was a witness in a major crime investigation where you have no protection against self-incrimination. They found that he was lying. They took him to court. He was dealt with for contempt, jailed under a false name until such time as he purged his contempt.
It's like
So that's what we do.
Soviet Russia. Extraordinary. Let's get you some legal advice. 1300 222 774. First up is Christine in Ballarat. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Are you there?
I'm here. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My query is a travel deal. We were booked to go through Alaska for 18 days, and of course it's been cancelled with our tour company. We've asked for a refund on our trip, and they say their policy does not allow a refund. And because we are elderly, we're just a bit concerned that we may not be well enough or able to go next year, or even if we can travel.
Christine, you need to look at the terms and conditions that you signed. If there are no terms and conditions specific to your contract, then you are entitled to your money back. But if your contract says that you must take this instead if we can't deliver on the first promise, you're stuck with those terms and conditions.
Are we? Right. Because they also want to take a $1,300 out of for each of us if we try to cancel.
You need to look really carefully at the terms and conditions. We've had a number of discussions about this, and if you and I had a contract to do something in particular and the law changed and we couldn't, I would need to give you the money back. But what a lot of the larger travel companies have done, not the smaller ones, is they've come along and said, well, in the event that we can't give you A, then you agree to accept B. And if that's what you've agreed in the terms and conditions, then B it is, even though you never read that down that far.
No, okay. We've actually have decided to join a class action through Slater and Gordon. Is that a sensible thing to have done?
If Slater and Gordon believe that they would succeed in a class action, they've done the work.
That's interesting. We might follow that up, Christine, and see how they're going with that class action and with you too. Thank you for that. Good luck.
That would be fabulous. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. The terms and conditions will differ greatly from one company to another, David, will they?
Yes, yeah. So they all the time, lots of them say, no, you've got to take a deferral.
Yep.
Lots of the cruise companies are very sophisticated in their terms and conditions. Yeah. It's the little people who don't think about it.
Eve is in Wanturna. Good morning. How can we help you?
Oh, good morning. Yes, a friend of mine lives in a retirement village, and at some point within the next 12 months she'll be going into aged care. We have a letter of entitlement for when she leaves there. It doesn't, and it says you can only receive money when the unit is released all 3 years.
Yes.
But my understanding is, under the regulations that go with the Retirement Villages Act, if you're going into aged care, you can actually get the money sooner than that if you're going into an aged care facility as opposed to just selling the unit. And that this would override what it says in her contract.
If that's what the law says, Eve, then that's what the law is. It's not my recollection of the law. Now, I am aware of aged care providers who also provide retirement village accommodation. And if you transfer from a retirement village into an aged care facility that's linked, often you get exactly the same credit on the way through. But that may not be the case in your particular village.
No, and I mean, I'm not a legal person, but the regulations say if you are a non-owner, well, she has a lease. She hasn't bought the unit outright. Would that make her a non-owner?
It may well be that she's the owner of a residence right in the village, but I'll take it on notice and tell you next week.
That would be fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay,
all right,
good
bye.
to talk to you. Thank you. Someone's texted in Noni saying the Spirit of Tasmania gave me a full refund.
Fantastic.
There's one. So clearly we have very different outcomes. Let's stay on that because Faye in Sunbury also has a travel holiday refund issue. Hi, Faye.
Oh, hi, Virginia and David. Thank you. Yes, we booked a holiday rental for next year in January, and that was in early Feb. By the 1st of June, we soon realised that the family was not in a position to take that rental, I notified the renting agent of this, explaining our situation. They replied, and I did know that they weren't offering refunds, but I asked for special consideration. They said that providing they get another booking, and I've given them 6 months' notice, that they would consider. I asked for a partial refund, taking into account perhaps administration fee. Do I have any comeback, or is that the way it is?
Well, Faye, you're entirely different from Christine from Ballarat.
Right.
Because what you've done, we don't know whether the holiday rental that you booked in February this year will in fact be available for use in January.
Right.
So you've changed your mind. There may well be great reasons for changing your mind,
Yep.
but it's not as if there is a failure in the ability to deliver.
Right.
You know, it's a little bit like we've had a couple of callers who've organised a wedding.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we now can't get people from overseas. Well, you don't actually tell the company that is the reception centre that you're only going to book the wedding if people can come from overseas because you never thought about it. So you're in a different situation. You've now come along and said, I no longer want to have that contract with you. Then you really have to wait until they find somebody else.
Okay. So it's normal practice. I mean, this is a...
I would expect that to be the usual practice. They've got a booking for next January. They've got some income. They'll advertise it again, and at that stage, the question will be: are there terms and conditions that govern your rental, and what's the company's loss?
I mean, it's a $1,500 deposit, which is half the rental.
Yes.
And in previous years, we've dealt with this company, and they've had, if you cancel within a certain time, your proportion is, refundable. Some of it's kept. But this year, obviously,
Go and read the fine print and find out what your rights are.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, David.
Thanks.
Thank
Good
you,
to talk
Virginia.
to you.
Bye.
Thanks for calling in. Linda is in Bentley this morning. Hi, Linda.
Hi.
Go ahead.
We have had problems with our sewage pipes that we had to ring a plumber over the long weekend because they blocked. We could see sewage coming out of the pipes, and there is our neighbour next door. He won't come to the party in Bang Half to have the lily-pilly tree blocked, to cut down, and the plumber who we spoke to said that that's on the top of the list of blocking sewage pipes in backyards, and he suggested that we go and get a plan from the Southeast Water
Do
group.
you share a sewage pipe with your neighbour, or is it your sewage pipe and your neighbour's tree?
It's our sewage pipe and his tree, and it's right next to our fence.
Then
It's
you
very
have
large.
then you have a claim that you would in the normal course run in the magistrate's court seeking an order that he remove his lily-pilly tree.
So I can just go to the solicitor and would he
That's where you would start the process.
and he would pay the costs?
He would make a contribution towards the cost. You are still going to be out of pocket. You need to sit down and work out what it's going to do to what's going to cost to pull a lily-pilly tree out. And it may, because of the way legal costs work, it may actually be in your best interest to pay the whole or a proportion of the cost of removing the tree.
Oh, okay. 'Cause
All right?
he's not legally obliged to pay.
Now, he's legally obliged to pay your costs of the proceeding on a court scale, but it's almost inevitable that the cost you pay will be higher.
All right. Good luck with that, but clearly you need to go and see someone. Let's get back to your calls. Michael is in Croydon. Good morning, Michael.
Yes, good morning. I'm ringing on behalf of my son. He has a neighbour tree adjoining his fence, and the tree is destroying the fence. He wants to get the fence replaced, but the owner of the tree doesn't want to know about it. What does he do? He's spoken to the property manager because it's a rented property, but the owner doesn't want to hear about it. Where does he go?
There are two issues, Michael. Depending upon the size of the tree, there might well be a local law issue involved in the local council. And so while you might go to the magistrate's court and have an argument about who should fix the problem, if you can't get a permit from the council to cut the tree down or trim it or do something, then the magistrate won't make an order that the tree be pulled down.
Right.
So have a look at the local law. Otherwise, it's a Magistrates Court action under the Fences Act, and it involves your son as the owner of the property and the neighbour as the owner of the adjoining property. Now, a long time ago, fencing disputes were between occupiers, so you would often have an argument with a tenant who had no interest in the property. Now it's an argument against owners.
Right.
So have a look at the local law, find out what the deal is, find out whether it's a tree which is impacted by the local law, and you tend to think if it's pushing the fence over, it probably is.
Yeah, it's growing quite rapidly actually, and it's pushing. I think it's a palm tree. So
it may end up being an inappropriate tree in the neighbourhood. So look at the local. We haven't asked what council it is.
Yep.
Have a look on the council's website. There will be a local law in relation to trees.
The reason I groan, Michael, is that I know from personal experience that palm trees are particularly tricky to remove, and that not all tree removers will actually go near them. They're actually they are a complicated thing to remove because of what they hold inside. So I know someone who had a palm tree removed, and it was a hell of a thing. So good luck.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry to sound that alarming note there. Michael has called in with an insurance question. Michael, you're from Garibaldi. I will admit I did not know there was a location in Victoria called Garibaldi. Where's that?
It's about 20 kilometres south of Ballarat.
Really? Okay, well, nice to know. What's happened to you, Michael?
I hit a kangaroo a couple of weeks ago, and I've lodged an insurance claim.
Yep.
And
how'd the kangaroo fare?
Actually, the kangaroo bounded off into the bush, so it was only a minor hit. So hopefully.
And how bad was your car?
Car came off second best.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
But insurance company, I've lodged a claim and they're processing it, but now they've asked what prescription drugs I took on the morning of the incident, and I'm just wondering where they get off on that, because by doing that I'm going to disclose personal medical issues that I have, and I'm not really comfortable with that.
It seems to me to be a very unusual question that they might ask.
Heard that before, David?
No.
And that's why I rang. It's the first time I've ever heard of it.
Okay.
Michael, homework. I will have a look at the two major insurers for Victoria and find out whether that's an issue under the terms of their policies. I would not have thought if a kangaroo hit your car that ought to be a factor relevant from an insurance investigation point of view.
Yeah, nor did I.
Were police involved, Michael?
No.
Okay.
No. And look, I have nothing to hide, but
that was my next
asking
question.
about
What did you take, Michael?
Yeah, well, I've taken antidepressants and blood pressure medication, so obviously that admits to them that I've got a mental health issue and also blood pressure issues, and they're querying, whether I was sleepy and things like that, which I've been taking these for a number of years and never suffered any side effects.
Yep. Next week, Michael.
Okay. Tune in for that. We should have an answer for you. Thanks so much. We're taking a number of calls this morning on travel refunds. Now, I know Errol in Waterways has actually tried to get on to speak to you for a couple of weeks now, David. So let's go to him. Errol, nice to speak to you finally. Good morning.
Hello, Virginia. Thanks for taking the call. Actually, I've held on for the last 4 weeks and haven't quite made it.
I'm sorry.
Not to worry. Look, this is very speedy. This is a prominent Australian airline that took 3 airfares off me, no agents, nothing involved. And now, and of course, the flight didn't leave Melbourne for Auckland. It was cancelled. And they're merely offering vouchers, and that's not suitable. So I wrote to them a week after the flight was supposed to leave and asked for a refund, and they didn't acknowledge the letter at all.
Yes.
I then rang them 4 weeks later. And eventually, after holding on for half an hour, I got through to a call center in the Philippines.
Yep.
And the lady who answered said, "No, we don't have a policy of returning your money." And she says, "I can't discuss it. I've reached the limits of my authority. That's the best I can do for you." I remember you, David, saying earlier on that I would be entitled to a refund because the voucher stuff didn't suit us, yes.
Well, you actually needed to look at the terms and conditions of the airline. Now, my recollection is that the Qantas site said that if we can't fly you when we've promised to fly you,
Yeah.
we will give you a refund. Now, they were the
Right.
terms and conditions that existed on the Qantas website. If you then went and looked at the Virgin website, given that
No,
we've
not
now-
the Virgin. This
Yep.
is a Qantas subsidiary.
But if you looked at the Virgin website said that it was it was actually a very complicated process, and of course the financial difficulties that Virgin's in at the moment makes that even more
Yes.
difficult.
Well,
Why
fortunately-
don't you look? Did you pay? You would have paid by credit card.
Indeed, I did. I paid in full.
Are you within time to dispute the transaction on your credit card?
No, my goodness, that time is long since passed. I actually paid this money in February,
Then
in the first week of February, and of course we're now in the middle of June.
depending upon your bank and whether you're a Visa customer or a MasterCard customer, there are different clawback periods in which you can dispute the transaction.
Oh.
But the trigger is generally not the date of the transaction, but the date of the statement that shows the transaction.
Oh, well.
So
that
have a
would have been
look at your credit terms and conditions and work out which one and whether you're in time or not. Even if you're out of time, I would still make the claim because the airline didn't fly that sector on that day, and under the Qantas terms, you're entitled to your money back.
But David, in technical legal terms, if Qantas had that policy, does its subsidiary Jetstar have to also abide by that?
You'd then need to look and see whether there are different terms and conditions for Jetstar. So you need to start with the Jetstar terms and conditions and see what they say. But
Yes.
if the flight did not take place, the starting proposition is that there's been a total failure of consideration and you should get your money back.
Yeah, that's what I
Okay.
thought.
All right?
Thank you, David. Thank you,
you.
Virginia.
Good luck. Thanks so much. Could we very quickly just fit in Anne from Middle Park, who's been waiting on the line as well? If you're able to be short, Anne, we can fit you in. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Hi, David and George. I'm just wanting to know, we bought a property about 6 months ago in Middle Park with plans for build and extension. Now we've actually gone through... Are you there?
Yep.
Yes, we're here.
And we've gone through and we've realised that property next door roof line is actually infringes on our boundary. The
Yes.
gutter does, but actually the roof line does as well.
And how old is the house next door?
It's about 8, I think the build's about 8, 9 years old.
Then the answer would be that's your neighbour's problem, not your problem, and you're entitled to make yourself very unpopular. The issue will be I would start with a re-establishment survey. So you actually want to work out what your title boundary is, what you own, and then you then go to your neighbour and say, all right, we now have this problem. Because they can't, as I recall, they can't get rights by adverse possession for airspace. So the starting proposition is it's their problem. They have to remove their roof from your property,
Shave a corner of the roof off.
which is kind of difficult.
Kind of difficult. Oh boy,
Okay.
you're about to have a tricky time with your neighbours, and I hope you can achieve this with some peace between neighbours at the end of it.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you for your advice.
Thank you,
I
Anne.
say that with a sinking heart. We've got a bit of homework. We'll see you again next week, David. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Virginia.
David Whiting there, well-known Melbourne solicitor, dispensing free advice.